Hey everyone, welcome back to day 26 of Walking in Wisdom, where I cover a new chapter of Proverbs every day of October 2020. Today we'll look at a variety of things, including that old sluggard coming back again, also people that disguise malicious intent with kindness, and also how to avoid gossip. But before we get to those, we're going to start with a very gross and famous proverb. And then we're going to move on to the lazy bones. Chapter 26, verse 11 says, "Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly." Do you see a man who's wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than him. Now, that is pretty harsh, but we do have a lot of supposedly wise people in the comment sections on social media. Number one tip for anyone going into YouTube stuff, fortunately it hasn't happened with me, is simply don't read the comments. But if you drop a good one, I'll read it, and I appreciate it. Anyways, so Solomon brings up that old lazybones sluggard again, and it's not a pretty sight with the unrealistic excuses to not leave the house for any kind of productive work. The sluggard says, "There's a lion in the road, there's a lion in the streets." As a door turns on its hinges, so does a sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish, and it wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Now, these are pretty consistent warnings about being lazy, and the funniest one to me is the sluggard is so lazy that he buries his hand in the bowl, but he's too tired to bring it to his mouth. But we've learned a lot about that sluggard, a lot over the last 26 days. Anyway, this last section, it warns us about the danger of the tongue, warning against someone who disguises their malicious intent under the appearance of good works and goodwill. And I also use this next proverb too, especially when someone is being a jerk. And they do something mean and then they say, "Oh, I'm only kidding. Come on, man." And verse 18 says, "Like a madman who throws firebrands or arrows, and death is the one who deceives his neighbor and says, 'I'm only joking.' But for the lack of wood, a fire goes out. And where there is no whisperer, quarreling ceases. As charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife." The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels, and they go down into the inner parts of the body, and like a glaze covering an earthen vessel are fervent lips with an evil heart. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. And when he speaks graciously, don't believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. And though his hatred is covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Well, thank you, Solomon, for these very important things to remember during the election season and every season, to be honest. To avoid gossip, don't listen to it. Avoid that person who spreads it, because our sinful nature will eat it up like a treat. The person who spreads gossip and starts fights is like an ember to wood, leaving a lot of destruction and strife in their path when there was none to begin with. But they will be found out for what they've done in the end. So if you don't want to be a dog that's returning to his vomit, be wise and move on from it. Hear God's word that works in us to become repentant and receive his forgiveness of sins. So with that, I say see you tomorrow for chapter 27. Have a great night.